Folks, thanks a lot for the 70,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. But we're not stopping here. Let's push it, folks, to 100,000 subscribers. So give that support to the channel and subscribe and hit that like button down below to reach our goal of 153 likes. And now let's go for it. The New Gate, an acclaimed next-generation MMORPG, where groundbreaking technology allows players to explore a vast world as if it were real. Choosing between races like human, elf, beast, dragoner, pixie, dwarf, or lord, players can join friends in an adventure where you can defeat powerful creatures, amass endless fortunes through trade, or become a blacksmith and craft legendary weapons. Whatever it is, everything you imagine is within reach in the New Gate, an MMORPG available worldwide. However, despite the tempting promise, one day the New Gate became a literally deadly game, and since then, it has been impossible to exit the game, and dying inside meant dying for real in the real world. Shin, the most powerful player in this RPG, managed to ensure his survival through his vast skill, hoping to one day end this macabre game. Accompanied by his group of 3 other players, Shin explores the 4 corners of this virtual world and faces increasingly dangerous bosses determined to end the lives of humans trapped in this place. On one of these adventure days, Shin encountered Origin, the Gate Guardian, and even after cutting the monster's wings, it fully recovered. Focusing on preventing this regeneration, the warrior uses his steel attack to shake the opponent, gaining room to deliver several blows that almost guaranteed victory, but Origin continues to heal. Soon the human uses the Moonblade dance to turn his sword into an unparalleled source of power. Then he hits the creature one last time and defeats Origin, the Gate Guardian. With victory, Shin achieved the titles Limit Breaker, the Achiever, and the Liberator, and gained the chance to log out of the game. Checking his friends list, he sees that all of his friends were finally leaving the game one by one until he was the last one left and bid farewell to New Gate. But just as he was about to exit the game, a gate opens in front of him, throwing the boy into an unknown place. Upon touching a pedal, he notices that this place seems too real to be virtual, even with the advancement of VR technology. Looking at his attributes, he discovers that all are above 2,000, even though the limit is 999. Still, he couldn't wait to leave. The logout button had disappeared from the menu. Upon seeing if his friends had to return, the boy realizes that he doesn't even have an internet connection. So that world was indeed real. Faced with this, the boy has a brief freakout, but quickly composes himself to resolve the situation. Shin's first move is to use his item that takes him to where his base was registered, and following the path indicated by the magic bird, he finds walls of a city he had never seen. Still, he manages to find his house after a long time, and there was an elf in trouble because some thugs were after her master. To extract information, they take the elf away, but a giant wild boar emerges from the forest and sends the men running. When the beast was about to finish off the elf, Shin destroys the creature and realizes with this that he is capable of adjusting the power of the spells he wants to use, and apparently the weight of the physical attack returns to him. Later, the elf thanks him for being saved and introduces herself as Tira Lucent. Her master, whom those men were after, is called Schnee Razor, and she is the sub-manager of the Moon Sanctuary. Soon, Shin remembers this elf with waist-length silver hair because she is one of the members of his old group. After reflecting that the Moon Sanctuary is present in this world, Shin asks where Schnee could be, but the servant is not willing to reveal the mistress's location, as she barely knows the man in front of her. However, as she is responsible for taking care of the shop and delivering messages to the mistress, Tira allows Shin to deliver one of these messages to Schnee, and each of them costs 1,000 jewels. However, the boy has no idea what money this is, and he only has Joss in hand. Tira questions if he took it from some item box because only a few royals and elders are capable of using this type of box. Furthermore, Jaw coins have the power to invoke spells, making them worth about 100 million jewels. Ironically, Shin remembers that inside the game, a Jaw is like having a penny. Curious, Tira asks who the boy is, and he responds that he is just an adventurer, and according to the settings, his race is a superior human. Tira replies that the superior humans were extinct, leaving only the common ones. According to what she heard, only 6 superior humans existed, and they have been missing since the day of the decline of glory, 500 years ago, a historical event that caused the mass disappearance of countless beings. At that moment, Shin remembers that after defeating Origin, the names on his player list disappeared, and if a number of that scale disappeared, then that is a significant incident. Connecting the dots, the warrior discovers that this world is that world after passing 500 years. After that, Shin offers a Jaw coin to the girl as a sign of friendship, and the elf admires the wonderful design of the coin she so desired, while Shin ends up analyzing the wonderful design of other things that interest him. Then he comments that such a coin could be useful for the elf as this race uses a lot of magic. Tira discovers that her mistress changed her appearance with illusionary magic because black-haired elves are symbols of bad luck. This hair color is famous for attracting tragedies like the men who attacked her moments ago. Because of this misfortune, Tira was expelled from her village until Shni rescued her. So the mistress placed a mystical barrier around this shop, making Tira live safely for the last 100 years. When he asks her about it, Shin finds out that before the curse, the girl's hair was silver. So he remembers hearing about a spell called Cursed Gift. Fortunately for the elf, Shin has the ability to purify. But even though the spell worked, nothing changed in the girl's appearance except for a strand of silver hair. Faced with this, Tira is extremely happy because she loves seeing her original hair after 100 years. Next, Shin calls the elf to cross the mystical barrier and promises to eliminate any threat that may arise. Thus, she finally manages to surpass that limit and walk freely into the forest until she reaches the beautiful view of a field and cries before the immensity of the sky. Back at the Moon's Sanctuary, Shin announces that he will visit the next city in search of his lost companions. Since the neighboring city is the kingdom of Barilich, Tara hands him a letter of recommendation that will allow Shin to bypass the inspection queue there. Before the departure of the superior human, the elf promises to notify when Shni returns, and after passing through the huge inspection queue, he sees that the letter is indeed very useful. Walking through the streets of the kingdom known as Bay, Shin is taken to the Adventurers Guild, an excellent place to gather information. Inside, he asks to register as an adventurer, and the attendant asks him to go up the left stairs and follow to the counter. Upon doing exactly that, Shin comes across an attendant identical to the other, then discovers that the girl downstairs is the older twin sister of this one, and her name is Celica. The girl downstairs is now called Silica. She informs Shin that he must pay the initial fee and fill out the paperwork. Unfortunately, the guild card will only be ready the next day, so the warrior uses the time to analyze his surroundings and notice that there are many iron and copper weapons in the guild, so the overall game quality was better before. At that moment, Celica arrives to serve the dish that the newest adventurer ordered, but when he puts the food in his mouth, he comments that it's hard to eat with someone staring directly at his face. However, the girl was there to check if the Moon Sanctuary's recommendation letter was really authentic. Shin doesn't mind going through this inspection, but he would love to finish eating before going, even to avoid meeting the guild master right away. However, it seems that the master was right behind the guy, and he was the one in front of him at the first guild counter. Thus, the man introduces himself as Barlux Heem, and getting straight to the point, he asks Shin to show the recommendation letter he received. To check if it is indeed original, Barlux places an authentic letter next to it, and as both shine, the adventurer's is not fake. Soon, Shin informs that it was Tira who gave him the letter, so the guild master explains some instructions that the elf should have passed when delivering this item. Barlux explains that with this letter, it is possible to enter almost any country without having to go through inspection. It is accepted in all guilds, and in the case of this kingdom, it allows scheduling an audience with the king. To have such a valuable item in hand, many steal or even kill to achieve their evil goals. So Shin must assure the master that he can protect this letter, otherwise it will have to be destroyed right now. Shin promises to take care of the gift given by Tira to honor the elf's name. That said, Barlux Heem stands up to greet the young man and states having great expectations for him, but before leaving, Shin needs to have his skills tested right there. At the end of the day, the warrior is exhausted from all the hustle and bustle, so he plans to increase his rank as soon as he receives the guild card. The next day, he wakes up exactly where he was, so he realizes that he really wasn't in a nightmare. Returning to the guild, Shin thanks Celica for the recommendation, and the girl notices the boy's new clothes. He says that with them, he feels more free to move. However, he knows that a lower-level adventurer should not walk with that flashy equipment before. So the attendant hands the card to the adventurer and warns that there are 9 adventurer ranks, SSS, and from A to G, completing jobs gives points to rank up, and adventurers can accept jobs up to 2 ranks above theirs. Soon Shin says he will do a mission to gather Hilk's grass, a famous potion ingredient, so he says goodbye and leaves. As the boy walked away, Celica observes that he doesn't seem very imposing, even though Barlux recognized him for his ability. Sometime later, Shin has been searching for Hilk's grass for 3 hours, until he identifies a monster moving strangely on the radar. In search of the monster, Shin spots a Skullfist Jack, a level 359 monster. Upon seeing a nearby destroyed carriage, the adventurer notices that the strange movement of the creature was because it was fighting. Remembering the adventurers in the guild talking about a Skullfist Jack making several victims in the vicinity, Shin decides to put an end to the monster once and for all, but the opponent's strength and speed indicate that this will not be an easy challenge. Interestingly, the creature was an undead carrying a light element sword, and Shin had never seen that before. Upon attacking again, the human fails to cause significant damage to the enemy, and his sword shouldn't withstand many more blows. Therefore, Shin decides to test his limit break skill, to then invest against the Skullfish Jack and destroy its heart. However, the boy laments that the skeleton's sword flew away and couldn't grab it, but at least there was a precious loot gemstone. With it in hand, Shin begins to believe that this real world is much more fun than he imagined, while the sword spins until it pierces the window of a woman named Ryan. After inspecting the sword, the soldiers inquire about what to do with it. Then the leader requests the presence of an appraiser to determine the weapon's composition and uncover who threw it into the castle. Speaking to herself, Ryan is certain that this sword belongs to someone very powerful. Upon returning to the city, Shin sees adventurers seriously injured. He questions a soldier about what happened. The man explains that everyone fell victim to skullfish in the northern forest, and only 4 out of the 12 sent survived. Shin recalls the corpses he found at that location. Additionally, the man mentions a sword seen flying through the forest until it collided with the castle. He then asks Shin if he knows anything about it, but Shin pretends not to. The man informs Shin that he's investigating the case and asks for information if Shin discovers anything. Back at the guild, Shin introduces himself to Celica to file a report. With the threat of Skullfish Jack, a high-priority extermination request was issued to hunt down this monster. Shin displays the precious stone he collected from the skeleton after defeating it. Celica is astonished and can't believe that this guy alone took down such a bizarre monster. Despite asking the girl to calm down, Shin ends up liking her firm and frightened demeanor. At that moment, an elf named Els approaches the conversation. Celica tells her co-worker that this guy defeated Skullfish Jack. Shin claims he can't prove it because he didn't bring the monster's equipment since it wasn't anything special. However, Els points out that Jack's equipment can only be obtained by someone ranked B or with a small fortune, so it's strange for a rookie adventurer to say that. Anyway, they decide to examine the precious stone to see if it contains the skeleton's mana. According to Els, this type of monster arises when the grievances or attachments of the dead merge with mana. Despite the forests of the north being very dangerous, many lose their lives there. Still, the mana of that region is weak, so it shouldn't create such strong monsters. Shin finds it strange for a level 359 creature to appear in that area, so the women become alert to the magnitude of this threat looming over the kingdom. Celica takes the precious stone to determine the monster's strength, while Els is sure that only a rank A could defeat an enemy of that caliber. Shin asks the elf to keep it a secret because the last thing he wants is to attract attention. After that, Shin takes a break to grab something to eat. Celica's twin sister, accompanies the boy to an empty table. She serves the requested drink and asks if it's okay to share the table with someone. Suddenly, a shadowy figure crosses the guild, drawing everyone's attention and startling the present adventurers. This individual carries the magical spear Venom, a legendary weapon capable of rivaling mythological weapons. He sits down and introduces himself as Wilhelm Avis, and Shin notices he's a level 188 Lancer. Avis comments that the boy has good equipment despite being a rookie. Shin explains that he comes from the countryside and is unfamiliar with big city habits. Avis understands why the boy wasn't startled by his name. After all, he's called Vampire because he hunts many undead. Shin thought this nickname was due to the Lancer's paleness, which makes everyone in the guild question the newbie's sanity. Avis finds the boy's oddity amusing and reveals that the nickname comes from the spear's draining ability, which consumes the victim's life force and transfers it to the user. At that moment, Celica arrives to serve the 2 dishes, and both warriors agree that eating is better than talking. After lunch, Shin steps into a library for the first time in a while. He spends the afternoon reading about the history of the Kingdom of Barilich, founded 511 years ago. He recalls Tira saying that the decline of glory happened 500 years ago, an event where several people disappeared. Shin thinks that players disappearing when they log out of the game might be the cause of this confusion. Then he finds a book about the races of this world and notices that they are the same as those in the game. Meanwhile, Barlux leads a meeting about Skullfish Jack's death. A knight questions why the executor didn't take the monster's equipment. Els explains that the adventurer didn't see anything special in the weapons. An old man comments that those who receive the letter of recommendation are usually not normal, and Barlux disagrees as he also received one. Anyway, the evaluation of the stone confirmed Skullfish is level 359, elevating him to king level, so it's worrisome to think that there might be monsters of that caliber in the northern forest. Therefore, the knight would like to know more about the equipment Skullfish carried and about who defeated him. Barlux recalls that the executor wanted to remain anonymous, but as for the skeleton's weapons, the knight mentions that the sword that flew into the castle appeared on the same day Skullfish was defeated. The sword's blade is about 7 feet long, made of a magical steel and mithril alloy, and enchanted with a light element spell. In other words, it's a weapon comparable to the treasure sword of the nation of Barilich, and since it's probably a legendary equipment, it wouldn't be wise to ignore someone who defeated the wielder of such a weapon. Moreover, there's a big problem with this whole story. Meanwhile, Shin enjoys some cat barbecue in the square until a tiger girl from the beast folk approaches. Shin offers her a skewer, and the girl takes it without ceremony. After eating, she gains confidence to introduce herself as Millie, so Shin also says his name and asks if she has someone to take her home. At that moment, she points to Wilhelm, who appears for an unexpected reunion. Shin thought she was the Lancer's daughter, but he explains that she's one of the children from the church orphanage, and since Millie is quite naughty and tends to run away, he often has to go after her. Anyway, Wilhelm comments that Millie is very shy, so he's surprised that she interacted with the boy. Speaking of which, the girl approaches and asks the young man to save a fox in the northern forest before leaving. As Shin settles into his quarters, he ponders why Millie asked him to save the fox, but with nothing else to do until Shni shows up, he decides to take a look into the matter. Speaking of which, he has a way to get in touch with Tira's master, so the next day he heads straight for the Moon Shrine. Upon arrival, he asks the elf to send a message to Shni asking her to meet him if she recognizes the sword he's holding. Tira is impressed by the ancient-level weapon, so Shin explains that its name is Blue Moon and it belongs to Shni, and can only be used by her or him, their creators, as well as those designated by the two of them. Although it appears powerful, Tara believes that wielding this sword would consume her, and Shin thinks it's because of the material the weapon is made of. After all, it's crafted from a chimera alloy, a fang from the Black Death Dragon, a scale from the Ocean Rebellion Beast, and a tear from an Elemental. In light of this, Tara remarks that nothing can scare her anymore when Shin shows up with all these stories, so Shin apologizes but emphasizes that the Blue Moon is the only way for Shni to remember him. Thus, Tira agrees to help, and the adventurer hands her a magical letter that will reach him no matter where he is. Tara is to send it to Shin if she hears any news from her master, simply by writing the recipient's name and saying the word send. Tara asks why the boy doesn't send this letter directly to Shni, and he explains that he's tried, but it never worked. Because of this, he ends up having to prove to Tira that these letters work, so he leaves the shrine, and the letter immediately arrives for the elf after he sends it. The thing is, for some reason, these letters can't be sent to Shni, maybe because he hasn't met her yet in this world. Impressed, Tara asks for some of these letters for herself, so Shin takes advantage of having several leftovers and gives her some. Since she's studying magic, the elf would like to study this magical item, so Shin gives her 3 of them to cover the shipping cost he asked for. After the adventurer leaves, Tara wonders why she doesn't send them directly to her master, since she knows her in this world. Sometime later, Shin arrives in the northern forest in search of the fox, but a frightening voice tells the boy to leave. He knows it's a magical barrier spell, but as he's resistant to mental interference, Shin can't be affected by this spell, although it's still a sign that something is coming. As he advances deeper into the forest, Shin discovers a huge staircase with a bird's perch at the top, and at the end of it, he finds a shrine. As soon as he arrives there, the dark voice of the forest disappears, so he believes that this is the center of the barrier. Just as he crosses the bird's perch, a strange snapping sound occurs, and as soon as he enters the shrine, he sees the fox lying in the center of a ritualistic symbol. Shin approaches and realizes that the fox cub is poisoned and cursed, so he hurries to prevent the animal's death. Shin is relieved to heal the animal, but becomes alert upon hearing a strange noise. His radar indicates the approach of a horde of enemies, who are undead skeletons equipped with weapons. It's a large number of enemies, so Shin summons a spear with one hand while holding the fox with the other. As the enemy army advances, the adventurer conjures the piercing groove to destroy half of the opponents, and then uses his shining flower to defeat the rest of the skeletons. Still, his radar identified 2 enemies right ahead that Shin hadn't seen, so the 2 Kitsune fox statues break and reveal 2 invaded golems at level 674. The blue fox attacks with ice magic, while the red one masters the art of fire. The dark mist in this part of the forest acted as a miasma that produced these aberrations, and Shin has no choice but to get rid of them. Using the shadow bonds, he traps the golems, but they release miasma from their bodies until it forms a smokescreen that affects the fox. Soon, the beasts had broken free from the bonds and were attacking the adventurer, who could barely see the enemies in the midst of the mist. However, the fox points to the magic circle where it was, and running to the center of it, Shin discovers that the mist doesn't invade this symbol, besides revealing the location of the enemies. As the monsters advance once again, Shin summons the Arch of Bonds to trap them, while ending the fight with a cataclysmic strike. The death of the creatures dispelled the mist, so the fox jumps on the human who saved it. Upon analyzing the animal, Shin discovers that it is a level 211 elemental, one of the most powerful monsters in the Anew gate, but it should look like a humanoid or a giant fox instead of a small cub. Either way, Shin takes the opportunity to adopt the little fox, which is already glued to him in gratitude. With a new pet on his head, Shin reflects that he had never seen miasma-affected golems and a cub elemental in the game and hopes that this could be a clue on how to return to his world. Meanwhile, Shni receives a magical letter at the request of her master. Hey folks, we're kicking off the new anime season, and if you enjoyed this anime and want to see more of it, go ahead and hit that like button down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We need your support to reach our goal of 70,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts and helps us grow our community. Catch you next time.